But when I was 15, I was sexually assaulted. I just had no idea that like my world, my life, that was going to be a part of my story in any way.
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't know how to deal with it.
Hey everybody, I'm Joe. I'm back on Trauma Talk and I'm super excited to introduce you to Jenny today. She's a good friend of mine and is about to graduate with her degree in nursing. She's very interested in helping those struggling with mental health, in part because of her story, which she's going to share with us today. So I wanted to start by asking you why you're interested in mental health. I know that from what I know of your story, some things started happening when you were younger. So could you tell us a little bit about what happened in your initial reaction?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of stuff growing up that necessarily wasn't ideal. There was a lot of family dysfunction and that sort of thing, but I think that's a lot of people's story. But when I was 15, I was sexually assaulted. I just had no idea that like my world, my life, that was going to be a part of my story in any way.
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to cope with it. And from that point on, I really struggled. Like that was the beginning of a lot of dark years for me.
Yeah.
I know initially after the attack, I came home and I slept all summer. Like I just slept all summer long and I couldn't pull myself out of like this deep, dark funk that I was in. I understand now that I was really trying to escape it and really trying to just not address it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to, because there's no rule book about how to deal with things like that, and we all kind of realize that, but it's not something we're taught about very much, and when it happens to you, you don't know what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to act, how you're supposed to feel. Yeah, so it was pretty tough.
I know you said sleeping was kind of your first coping mechanism that you went to, which is super common. I definitely understand that one. Did you seek out any counseling, or what was your experience with that?
I know initially that my parents took me to see a counselor through a church that I'd not been to before. When I went and spoke with this individual, it was pretty fresh. It had only been a couple months, and I wasn't super ready to talk about it yet. I didn't really feel like I wanted to start talking about it yet. I didn't feel ready, but you know, I thought that this is what I was supposed to do. And I started talking with this individual, and you know, she just asked me a lot of really personal things about the attack, really wanted to know like every little thing that had happened, and I felt like I, you know, had to divulge all this information because it was like somebody in the church and you kind of feel like you're supposed to.
Yeah.
And I just remember like one of the moments that really was for me pretty damaging was when this person accused me of lying and then, you know, told me that I should be ashamed of what I'd done because it was my fault and that I didn't act in such a way that was appropriate for a Christian young woman, and just really turned it on me, and that was a lot of victim blaming.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people have had experiences with that too.
Yeah.
But it really set me back for a long time, and I didn't feel like I could really talk to anyone after that. I wasn't really interested in therapy after that.
No.
I wasn't interested in church really after that, and for me, I pulled away even more, and I just really retreated into myself, and it was really harmful. So yeah, that was one of the, I think, the moments that stands out for me as incredibly painful and really hurtful deeply.
Yeah, when that's one of the first reactions, not even if it's one of the first reactions, any reaction like that ever is incredibly harmful and will stick with you, but when that's one of the first reactions you have from someone in a position of authority, like a counselor or a Christian counselor, that's just horrendous.
Yeah, it was not something I look back on and think of as really helpful in a counseling way, because it was reinforcing, you know, some of the guilty feelings that we survivors often have of like self-blame and shame and doubt
Yeah.
and all of that.
You did go to see other counselors, right? Because you were talking about kind of your journey with medication, correct?
Yeah, so I did eventually go see other counselors, and a lot of that for me was often through like being admitted to a psych ward, like,
Yeah.
and that's a part of my story that with mental health being stigmatized as it is in our society is often hard to share with people. How many times I had to seek inpatient treatment and seek really rigorous therapy and really like emergent forms of therapy, but truthfully my depression and my PTSD and my anxiety, it really spiraled out of control after that, and it just kind of devolved into this cluster of just struggling every day with like different diagnoses just to get through all of them and deal with all of them, and you know, insomnia, and for a time there too, just not wanting to even go to the store, not wanting to go out. Like I just became really like agoraphobic in a way, and it was just all of it kind of compounded and was so debilitating. So for sure there were times where it got to a point where I needed to address it because it was out of control. For me, one of the moments I really remember as well was just struggling with feeling like I had to take medication that I didn't want to take, that I didn't want to be dependent on. And then I felt like it was a reflection of my lack of control over my own issues and like needing meds. And I felt like even worse about that for such a long time. And it took me a long time to really realize that, you know, that didn't speak against me in any way, or that wasn't me failing in any
Personal
way.
weakness or anything like
No.
that. No.
But I mean, you know, it was always the struggle between like finding the right med or the right combo of meds. I think that my biggest frustration and like the thing that made me feel the most kind of out of control and really dependent on them was the fact that I really thought that I was going to have to take medications forever.
Yeah.
I didn't really think that I'd ever be able to be at a point in my life where I wouldn't need them all the time, and I wouldn't need to take so many all the time. You know, I thought like my life every day was going to be taking 5 different medications and like all the different times of the day, and then with food, without food, before sleep. Like it was just a lot to juggle and manage. But what I didn't realize was that eventually I didn't need the medications anymore, and that was really great to be able to get to a point where I didn't. But I also was like surprised by that.
Yeah.
And then when that happened too, I was like, well, is this like really, I don't need the meds? Like, am I gonna be okay without the meds? And so there was a little bit of that, just like relearning, like that I could manage a lot of my symptoms with like behavioral coping skills and, you know, positive self-talk, and just a lot more of those techniques, like because I had worked so hard in therapy and had become so well at using those tools more, that I was able to not need the meds in addition. It didn't mean more or less of me or make me more or less of a person whether I needed the medications or didn't, but that just accepting that they were such a great tool and really helped to just, you know, function and just be able to live the life I wanted to live. And if I need medications again at some point, like there's nothing wrong with that either. And finally being able to make peace with the meds.
I mean, for the longest time, I felt the same way. I was like, no, I would never do meds, because I was kind of brought up in the same society and culture that you were. And then I needed them, and I started taking them, and I hated myself for a long time for that, until I realized, like, it's either this or I don't want to live. So why would I want to live life like not wanting to be alive all the time, where I could have this tool that helps me stay alive in the meantime as I learn skills to want to stay alive and like to help me with that. You know? I know we were talking earlier about some of like I can't really say the highs and the lows, but really like the lows, some of that we as survivors and just with grief and pain in general, you often remember some of the lowest points. What were some of those for you?
Yeah, for me, some of the lowest points were really feeling like no one understood what I was going through, and that I was like this social pariah. I felt like everyone can see it, everyone knows. Everywhere I would go, I would either like see my attacker's face in people that weren't my attacker.
Yes.
I just felt like everyone knew that there was something wrong with me.
There was a
that
sign or
something happened to me, like they knew all of my business. Like, and I knew it was irrational, but I also felt that way so deeply. That kind of became a feeling like everyone had really abandoned me. And with like teens, we know a lot of times that suicide attempts are often not precipitated, but before a suicide attempt, a lot of times teens will feel like everyone around them, like their friends, their family, has abandoned them. Whether or not it's true, it's just a feeling that they have. And I felt that keenly. There was one time after I got out of the psych ward, I was on a new medication, felt completely out of control. I felt like I didn't know what to do about that feeling. And then on the other hand, I just felt so numb. Like I just felt so numb by this constant struggle that I just kept having, like this cycle of feeling like I was never going to be able to pull myself out or hold my head above the water long enough to catch a breath. That I felt like I couldn't escape from it. So, you know, I mean, I felt like, what was I going to do? And, you know, one day I just woke up and I didn't feel like I was fully alive anymore. I felt like I was already one foot in the grave. Like I was already half dead as it was. And so and I'd been thinking about it for like a while at this point. I'd been thinking about it daily, constantly for like weeks. So I took like a whole, well, it was 3/4 of a bottle of sleeping pills. I was ready. Like I wrote a note, you know, and in my note I remember I wrote, like, I'm so sorry, but I just can't do this anymore. Like I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I truly felt that way. Like I just felt like this is no life. And then I fell asleep, and I don't know how, but I did wake up. And when I was asleep, like I was pretty drugged up, so it could have been it could have been the sleeping pills. But I just remember like hearing this voice say, like, you want to live, wake up, call 911. You don't want to die. And I did, and I still don't know how I woke up from all of those pills because I was really out of it. But I did, and I called 911, and I told them like what I'd done, and I wanted to live. And in that moment, like I was, you know, inches from death's door probably, I realized like I don't want to die. Like I am done working towards death, and I'm ready to start working towards life. Having that moment and having that realization finally turned on a light switch for me. It just kind of turned the tables around, and I realized like this is my battle.
Yeah.
This is my battle to fight. This is not something that is winning against me, that I am going to take back control, and I am going to do whatever it takes because I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And even then, like I didn't know what my life was going to look like. I still felt like there was a possibility that it might always be this way.
Yeah.
Like it might always be the same struggle, but I just knew that I didn't want to die. I had a great team. Like I had a great interdisciplinary team. Like I had a social worker, I had a therapist, and I'd been going to group therapy. And I sat down with my social worker one day, and this was like kind of a turning point for me with her when she, you know, said to me, do you want to live or do you want to die?
Yeah.
And I said, I want to live. And I didn't know it till now, but I want to live. And so she said, okay, so let's focus all our energies on that. When I had attempted, I was trying to finish high school.
Yeah.
And for me, for some reason, that was just too much in addition to trying to work on recovery.
Yeah.
And it was distracting from recovery, and it was making me feel helpless in both arenas because my energies were so split, and I was so busy trying to just figure out how to deal with everything. That one of the first decisions I made was like, first off, I'm dropping out of high school.
Yeah.
And to me, that seemed like a huge failure at the time. But I ended up getting my GED and going to college anyway, and being just fine. It's not that I'm like recommending quitting high school for everyone, but for me it was the right decision to make, and it was hard. It was hard for me to say no to like the expectations of my teachers, of my peers, of my family in that way, but it was worth it. And it kind of started this snowball effect of just saying no meaning it,
Yeah.
and just not allowing anyone to ignore my no, to hear my no, but violate it anyway. And because no was such a thing that I felt was hollow for me in my life after what happened.
Understandably.
That I felt like didn't have the meaning I wanted it to. That just being able to say no to things and have it be 100%, this is like bottom line, it's set in stone, it's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Like, this is my life and I am making a decision. Little things at first, but then it just became like a theme of my life where my no was starting to be heard more and more.
Yeah.
And people in my life were starting to see me kind of recover that strength.
Yeah.
And just really owning it and being empowered and no nonsense. Just fully like, if I say no,
that's what I'm doing.
Then it's no. And whether that was like canceling plans or whatever.
Yeah.
Not to say that I was like super flaky person or anything, but just in every sense, like I just stopped being afraid of saying no.
Yeah. Did that relate to what we were talking about earlier, where you were becoming more comfortable with your own emotions, like more comfortable with yourself?
I'd always wanted to come into my own in a way.
Yeah.
But I just thought that there were too many things stacked up against me and I wouldn't be able to break free of a lot of those like shackles and be able to have that control and that ownership and know myself enough to be comfortable getting up some days and saying, like, hey, today I'm just in a certain mood and I'm just going to embrace it.
Yeah.
Because I realized that trying to stuff my emotions or put them away or avoid them or escape them just really didn't work for me. It really didn't work. I don't think it works for a lot of people.
No.
It manifests in a lot of different ways. I mean, for me, it was sleeping all the time, avoidance, drugs, alcohol, all kinds of different stuff. I mean, and I think that that's a road that a lot of people take.
It is, yeah.
And I think that there were some realization moments there for myself as well, where it was like, if I don't start working through my stuff, these are the paths that I'm going to take. And my life could look very different, very desperate, and very tough.
Yeah.
In 5 more years, if this is the way that I choose to deal with things, by not dealing with things.
Yeah.
By putting band-aids over a gaping wound.
You were talking about the moment where, you realized you wanted to live and you decided to choose life and all of that. And you didn't know if it was going to get any better, but then you explained how eventually it did. And I also had a similar moment where for years I was like, I don't know if this is going to get any better. I really don't know if life is worth sticking around for. But it was. But I don't know what someone could have told me during those years to convince me of that. What would you tell someone who's in the midst of all of that darkness and heaviness?
I think what I wish that I'd had in place that I didn't have in place would be what they call like a peer-to-peer specialist or like a mentor. Somebody who's gone through something really similar to what I'd been through, like another sexual assault survivor. That had been through therapy and meds and the whole gambit, and just been able to kind of be someone that I could turn to and say like, okay, well, how is it going for you? Someone who's farther on their road of recovery.
Yeah.
And I know there is a big push for that now in mental health, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that it would have been something that I could have clung to, like with all the fierceness of life, having someone that completely understood what I was going through, and someone who could tell me like, it does get better. It got better for me. And if it got better for them and they've been through what I've been through, and like so many of us and like brothers and sisters of the same darkness, like if they are where they are now and they're making strides and their life is improving and they're happier, then I would feel more hopeful for my own journey. So I think that even just, now that I've been, 10 years out from it, I've met so many friends. Like I
Yes.
have so many friends, and it's awful to know that there are so
Yes.
many people that have had that same experience, but we're here for each other in ways that I know not everyone completely understands, but it's the same way when soldiers come back from
Yes,
combat,
exactly.
and they're able to really, lean on each other because they've had similar experiences and they completely understand what each other are going through.
Yes.
So
You don't have to explain it. It's just there.
yeah, it's just there, and we just know.
Yeah.
And we just we it's like a sixth sense of it's a different way of communicating, and we all know, like, we can call each other anytime if we're struggling. Like, we know that friend has struggled in the same way.
Yeah.
And so it means more. Like, humans have this innate sense of being able to tell when someone's being genuine.
Yes.
And I know we've all had, probably therapists who you could just tell, like, they completely understand what I'm going through.
Yes,
and maybe
or not.
and exactly, or not. And sometimes you just know, like, they don't know what I'm going through. They've read it in a textbook, but they don't understand.
Yeah.
But to have, whether it be a support group or just someone, just one person to be able to turn to and know, like, that they've done it, I can do it, and
Yeah.
I'm not alone.
Yeah. I think that is hugely important. And like you were saying, I also have so many friends. Like, so I have very, very, very few friends who haven't experienced some form of assault in their life, which is truly heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But as I became more vocal about what happened to me, I realized I wasn't the only one. And I think that there's power in telling your story, because you realize you're not the only one. You realize you're not alone. And it's almost like you're talking about a sixth sense. It's almost like you're born of the same family. Like, you get it. There's it's like a sisterhood or a brotherhood. I mean,
I have had more friends than I can count who have felt like they could confide in me in that way before I had necessarily even told them my own story. And it's just, we just know. We know.
Yeah.
As humans, we can see and understand the suffering in another that we have reflected in our own lives.
Yeah.
And so I truly think that is a healing, helpful, empowering, great thing.
Yeah.
A great support system to be in place for anyone who's been through any trauma, because whether they be different, there's veins of similarity in many different types of aggressive trauma. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. And I think, I mean, if you're watching this and you feel alone, like I did for years, and like I think I can say you did for years, please know that you're not. Like, you feel like you're the only one who's gone through it because you're the only one who's experienced exactly what you've experienced, but it is a common, unfortunately, experience, and there are people around you who get it, and we get it even though we're not immediately in the room with you. And please know that there is help around you, and there's help that you can find, and people who do understand.
Yeah, just reaching out and knowing like your resources, like whether it be support groups in your area, or mental health facilities usually have lists of places that work with the peer-to-peer specialists or therapists that can help hook people up with things like that. And online support
forums.
groups, just anything. Anything. Just don't be afraid to reach out. Believe me, there are so many people in your life that don't want to see your light fade and go out. And it doesn't always seem that way, but it is a truth. And even if they're people that you haven't even met yet in your life, like if you don't decide to live, you'll never know if you could have met the one, or had a family, or had that amazing career, or seen the world, whatever it may be that you've always wanted to be able to do and get back to. Hold on to that and reach out.
Yeah, it's worth it.
It is. It's totally worth it.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much for being here with me today and for sharing your story to the world and also with me. Seriously, I know it's not easy to do that, but it's amazing to do, and seriously, thank you so much. If you don't know me already, my name is Jo Beckwith, and I speak on topics like this pretty often, whether it be sexual assault or domestic violence or dealing with mental health illness in many different forms. So if you're interested in hearing more videos like this, please feel free to subscribe to my channel or Facebook page. Please take care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you next time.